Greetings, welcome back, everyone. We're going to do a quick ASCM-Twin Cities chapter update with John Melbye. John, can you give us a quick introduction of who you are and what you do?
Hi, Vin. Thanks so much for allowing me to take part in this conversation. My name is John Melbye. I'm up in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We are the Twin Cities chapter of ASCM, separate from the national organization, but ASCM-Twin Cities chapter. I'm the managing director, and I spent many years in supply chain and a lot of opportunities these days to give back and help educate the next generation and talk about what's possible with supply chain.
Great. Now, for those that don't know about the chapter, you guys offer credentialing, supply chain credentialing. Maybe you can go over a couple of things in that area.
Yeah, so the chapter has kind of the focus of the chapter is membership and education and networking. So we do networking events where people can come together and kind of share their problems or their solutions with other colleagues. And then we have the education wing, and I'm going to even split that into multiple pieces, where one of them is the credentialing certification trainings. There's the 4 different ASCM certifications or APICS certifications, and that are quite intense and quite established and sought after in industry. We also offer the demand-driven planner and leader certification trainings. Those are newer from a different organization through the Demand-Driven Institute, but the chapter offers those. There are certificate programs and foundational programs, all about education, but specifically the certification trainings. There's the CPIM, which is the Certified in Planning and Inventory Management. That's the longest, the one with the longest history. There's the Certified Supply Chain Professional, which is the second longest history. So the second, it's kind of like the popularity is based on how long they've been around, but the functionalities are different. The CPIM, we talk about it being inside of the 4 walls of your organization. The CSCP is more a broader scope, and then CLTD, the Certified in Logistics, Transportation, and Distribution, focused, of course, on logistics, transportation, and distribution. And then CTSC is the Certified in the Transformation for Supply Chain, which is a big happening right now where we need to address a lot of different things, not just look at historically what's worked, but how do we transform our supply chains from cost centers into profit centers, and what does that transformation look like? So those are the 4 big APIC certifications. The demand-driven certification, as I said, is a newer one, a little bit different in the thought leadership world, and starts with inventory management as its core, and leads to everything else after that.
Right. So a lot of important supply chain credentials. So if you're a younger person or mid-career or above, getting your credentialing is really worthwhile. Definitely in the definitely career field. So check out.
And just to add on to that, the in the world we live in now, where job security is not really a thing. How do you differentiate yourself, whether it's getting a job or keeping a job or performing better at a job? To me, this is one of the ways you differentiate yourself, with the attitude and the momentum and the interest in pursuing education and pursuing staying current with best practices and that kind of thing. These are important steps. But they're not for everybody. There's a degree of difficulty in achieving these certifications, and if you're hesitant about a certification, you can try the certificate program and kind of see what the information is like and how it plays, as a less of a almost like a introductory starter pack, to see if this kind of training is for you.
Yeah, and I would say that having your certification really goes a long way. I know when I moved back to the Twin Cities, I didn't have my credentials, but then when I was in the program, I could put that on my resume, and then when I was going through interviews, it was a total different conversation. It showed that I'm committed. I really wanted to work in the industry. I'm working towards it, versus where before I didn't really have that on my resume. It was kind of just crickets. I didn't really hear back from anyone or any employer. So
It is interesting how important that becomes, and how uh, differentiating yourself is really the key. And you can do it by uh, getting really creative on your resume, or you can do it by actually going out and getting one of these certifications. Uh, Multiple ways to do it, and not everyone, not the same approach isn't going to work for everyone, but you got to kind of pick your battles and see what makes sense for you.
okay. And then with most organizations, ASCM on the national level has their annual conference. And maybe you can discuss a little bit about what that's about, since you just attended, and why you'd recommend people to go and check it out.
Yeah, thanks, Vin. That's a great leading question. And so I've been a big fan of these types of conferences, right? Whether it's ASCM or somebody else, but where you go and there's some sessions that are keynote addresses where everybody sits in the same session, and there are some then kind of breakout sessions where for this hour there's 5 different offerings, and you can choose whichever topic makes sense for you and what you're interested in. And then in the next hour there's 5 other sessions, so you're not locked into a track or everybody sitting in the same thing. You've got a lot of flexibility in what you can attend. So ASCM has been doing this for years. They're kind of in a reinvention setting right now, where they're trying to create a little bit more interactive sessions, instead of everybody just sit for 45 minutes or an hour and listen to somebody show their PowerPoint. They're trying to turn it into something a little more interactive, which is an interesting shift, especially in supply chain, where we have a tendency to have gotten used to sitting and listening for an hour. And so being in an interactive session, at least when I was younger, or earlier in my career, if somebody said something was interactive, that was I don't want to go to that, because I don't really want to interact. Now now you can't keep me from interacting, but these are the changes that we face. So this conference was a 2-day conference. So it used to be a 3-day. Now they've turned it, or at least this year was a 2-day event. It's usually held in one of the larger cities. This one happened to have been in Columbus, Ohio. Next year it's in Long Beach, California. So we're hoping that will result in some port tours in Long Beach. But it's a great opportunity to learn from the sessions. It's a great opportunity to network with other supply chain professionals, and there's a lot of different opportunities. One of the cool things that they did this year was they would give a topic and 10 chairs around a table. So a facilitator and 10 participants, and an open kind of discussion. And those to me are always interesting, because you learn really from people who are down in the weeds doing whatever the topic is, or from people who are trying to figure out how they can apply that topic or use that topic. So it becomes a very interesting discussion. Again, focusing on being more interactive versus sit and listen to people and then try and figure out in your own head how in the world I can use that information back home.
Mm-hmm. And then what were some of the maybe memorable topics that were discussed? Any thing that's maybe stood out for you in terms of the trends or anything like that?
I think there was a lot of talk around AI, and I'm not an AI expert, and I'm honestly, I spend a lot of time wondering why we have skipped over regular intelligence and we've gone right to artificial intelligence. But conceptually, there's some stuff out there that is very intriguing to me. And whether it was in a session where Google presented kind of some of the things that they're seeing in the horizon, or I met a company there that has some that fully that's their job is an AI, creating these AI agents. So whether you're at a visiting a colleague, seeing a presentation, or seeing one of the exhibitors, you can kind of figure out what it is you need to learn about. And it's such an interesting approach when you go to these conferences or conventions, where some people have been tasked with figuring a solution. Right, we have a problem with our inventory retrieval system. Go find out what's out there in the world. And some people are just tasked with understanding better ways to do things. Not searching for a product, but looking for a methodology. So everybody kind of comes to these conferences with a different goal. But and this is the beauty of these types of conferences, ASCM in particular, where you can, there's a time set aside to network with people. There's time set aside for big, government policy type discussions, or where is AI going discussions, and then there's smaller, more specific things like what can I do specifically to answer this problem. So all of those things are there, but when you go, you have to actively participate in kind of seeking that out, and I think that's a bit of a scary part, and maybe something that we need to work on when we go to these conferences, to be able to, almost everybody you see has something. So openly saying hello and meeting those people is not necessarily what our mind is telling us to do, but that's what our goal should be, to meet as many people as possible and figure out if they have a story that impacts us. And that's a different approach to going to these conferences than typically than I used to take, but that's my new approach.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. I know you've been attending these conferences for years now, and they're all over the U.S., probably in Orlando, maybe Las Vegas. They probably circulate around.
Yeah.
Can you share another tidbit for someone that's looking at going to Long Beach next year? It's going to be his or her first time attending, and maybe you can share a tidbit or two to get the most out of the conference.
I always like to. I remember back years ago, I saw a Jim Carrey movie called Yes Man, and the idea was he would say no to everything, and then he all of a sudden flipped and said yes to everything. And that was a bit of a turning point in my life, where I just said, you know what, I'm going to intentionally say yes to things. And so going to conference, and then while you're at conference, there's an opportunity to go meet some people over here. Well, let's say yes to that. Because it's easy to just go to conference, go to 3 sessions, and sit in your room and work the rest of the time. But it's for some of us, it's harder to force ourselves to go take part in different things. So even though it sounds like, I'm not really that interested in doing some discussion group thing, but try it. Get out there, give it a try, say yes to the things that you kind of inside want to say no to, and attend all the sessions you can. And it's kind of hard, because you attend a session and you want to kind of process what you heard and think about it, and understand how it applies to you, but right away there's another session. So get and go to those sessions and kind of reflect on them later. But sit at lunch. When you go to lunch, sit at a table where you don't know anybody. When you are sitting in waiting for a session to start, say hello to the person next to you that you don't know. These are the opportunities to meet people. Come with your LinkedIn ready to share. Don't be shy like I don't want to connect with anybody. Make those connections. Those are the ways to really make a difference in the world, and in your own life, personally and professionally.
Good advice all around. Now, I assume it's a few hundred people at least, maybe less than 1,000. I'm guessing at these conferences, or
typically there's more than 1,000. These are big conferences, and I would say over time things have really changed, and the amount of people, I think, says a little bit about the economic situations in the world, as well as the location where it is. And so you get a lot of people who might want to go to Las Vegas, and they may or may not stay for most of the sessions. That's not our problem, that's their problem. But typically we have, I'm going to say these days between 1,000 and 2,000, and I think it fluctuates. And the thing that I see in the world that I don't see, just about every day I hear about another conference or show or exhibition or expo or something. And so if there's one, I wouldn't be surprised if there's one every 10 minutes starting up in the world. So which one do you choose to go to? My gosh, if there's 100 to choose from, you got to kind of be selective. And how do you figure out which ones to go to? These are the challenges that, it's not simply, hey, we're having a conference, everybody go because this is your only chance this year. There's another one next week somewhere that may be more or less relevant for you. I don't know, but get out there and go to some of these conferences. If you don't go to the ASCM one, go to something and get out there and follow the same advice. Meet people, introduce yourself, share your LinkedIn, however you connect with people, make those connections. But of course, if you want to see me, I'm always at the ASCM conference.
Okay, very well. All right, as a long-time ASCM Twin Cities chapter leader, it's all about networking. You mentioned education and membership. Now, maybe you can fill us in on the last couple of events that you've had and what you're looking forward to this fall and winter.
Yeah, that's a really great question. The recent events, well, when we had the conference, and that was in mid-September, or early to mid-September. So that kind of, when we have the conference, all of us are headed out that way, so the events kind of die off. But we did have, we had a networking event on the 24th of September that was just get together at one of the local breweries and hang out and talk about supply chain. Right, we like to think of ourselves as the supply chain community. So if typically, at least this used to be true, if you go to a bar with your friends and start talking about supply chain, you're out. You're not going to get invited back next time. But when you go with the supply chain community to a networking event and you talk about supply chain, that's where those things happen. And that's where you're likely to find some help, maybe meet somebody who's had a similar problem and maybe solved it, or maybe together you figure out the solution. So that was our last event. Our next event is coming up tomorrow night, so that's a little bit too quick. And I believe we have so we try and do networking events, webinars, and tours. So tomorrow night is a tour. I think November 18th is a webinar. That'll be during the day, and that'll be free. And we're going to try and do another happy hour prior to Christmas, sometime in early December, and then starting in January and maybe February, we're going to start up our education and our training again with regards to the certifications and those types of trainings. But one of the things that we didn't really talk about, but one of the other things that the chapter is spending some time reinventing ourselves as well. And so we've got some opportunities for sponsorship. And I mentioned these tours and these happy hours. Those are all opportunities through sponsorship that a company can say, okay, we'll take care of the billing for that. We'll bring everybody together under our brand, but ASCM brings the people and the conversations. And so those are sponsorship opportunities. And then we have bigger sponsorship opportunities that I won't go into the details on, but they're out on the website. And the thing that I want to, the thing that I think is the future of training and learning between our organization and companies, I'm calling it project-based learning, where a company might have a idea that they want to try and make some change in their organization, but they need an unbiased external partner to come in. And so what we do, instead of giving a generic training and having them figure it out, we give a training specifically for the activity they're trying to improve. And knowing what they know about their company. Because in traditional world, if you go to a generic training, you now have to figure out how to apply that to your company. In this case, we want to give you a training that already shows the path for that application, and then we continue as a coach or advisor to help you kind of push some momentum down that path. And I think that's again, impact to the company and positive results is what we're after, versus, hey, we sold you a training, now good luck, go forth and prosper. We want to be with you and collaborate on that solution through this form of project-based learning.
Okay, interesting. I didn't know about that. Now, if I recall, 10 years ago when I was involved in the chapter, I think we were the largest in the U.S. in terms of membership, or most active, or something like that. Does that still hold true, or what's the latest?
Well, since nobody else is here, I can still say we're the largest. But there's other chapters. There's been a lot of consolidations,
Okay.
and so Chicago consolidated with another chapter nearby them. I think we go back and forth as to who's the largest. I think Toronto is doing very well. And there's a few others. Western Canada has kind of grabbed a bigger swath of land or representation. So we're now, I'd say we're in the top 5 in terms of number of members, but it's the members that participate, whether it's on the board of directors or coming to local events. I think all organizations struggle as we try and find the proper day of the week and time of the day where people without kids can come to a happy hour event, and people that are working in certain jobs can come for a noon event. I mean, it's so hard to compete with all of the things that people are trying to do. And then you put in the geographic struggles where, our members in Duluth, Minnesota can't come to an event, a 2-hour event in the Twin Cities usually. So we keep trying to figure out how we can have some outlying events that those people can come to, as well as continue having events in the cities. We haven't solved that problem yet, but that's one that's on the top of my list all the time.
Okay. All right. So before we end, John, anything you want to touch upon or mention before we sign off?
I think, my standard statement that I make to everybody is that get out there, network, educate yourself, there's so many different ways to do things. But one of the things that strikes me, and I'm guilty of this as well, I have a tendency to look at the website and try and figure it out, and if I can't figure it out, I don't do it. And the world is complicated enough. So if you're having struggles, if you look at the website, you don't know for sure what to do, just got questions about, should I go after this certification or that certification, give us a call. Either, you can call the number, you can email us, but reach out and talk to somebody versus just saying, well, I couldn't figure it out, so I'm just gonna ignore it. So please, this is a safe space. There's no stupid questions. If you call and say I couldn't figure out membership, or I couldn't figure out which training to do, or I'm torn between this or that. It's kind of like when you go to a restaurant and there's two things you want, and you ask the waiter, is this one spicy or is this one something else? You ask questions because it's not clear. Well, we're the same way. If you're looking at the website and something's not clear, or you just want to explore something that isn't there, or you have a problem you're trying to solve that we don't talk about, let's have a conversation, because we are flexible and capable, and we can help you.
Yeah, I want to reiterate about getting involved, what you mentioned, because when I did that with the Twin Cities chapter 10 years ago, that was a turning point for me. I went from a guy that was interested in supply chain, didn't know how to get involved, taking the CPIM course just at the Hamlin building in St. Louis Park, and then actually joining the board, and then it went from there, and I had so much fun. It was a big part of my life. I've made lifelong friends like you, John, and it just enriched my life so much for the better. So, and if I were there in the Twin Cities now, I'd still be involved. So, appreciate that advice.
And that's a great comment, because the impact that we can have, and to your point, when I joined the chapter, I would go to conference, for example, let's call it from 2012 to 2015, 2016. I would go to conference and I would be head down. I didn't talk to anybody. I just went to the sessions, made my notes, tried to learn as much as I could. And then after joining the board and realizing that networking function and meeting more people, and everybody has a story to tell, and now when I go to conference, it's like secondary that I attend a session. I'm looking around to see who I know and who I can meet. So it's really, as to your point, has changed my life as well, and given me opportunities that I would never have had without being part of ASCM.
Right. Okay, so that's the latest updates with ASCM's Twin Cities chapter, John Melbye. Thank you, John.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Good to see you, Vin.
You bet.